celebrate the 80th birthday of our beloved painter Bob Ross at WIPB, Ball State PBS, the pub TV station where it all began. This October 29th, a happy little fest featuring a huge 300-person painting class with CRIs, including actor David Arquette. Plus games, kid painting, look-alike contests, food trucks, an ASMR corner, Bob's original paintings on display, and lots more. For tickets and info, go to happylittlefest.org. Baseball. The crack of the bat. The roar of the crowd. It's at this time of year that we celebrate the sport's most memorable moments and its legendary heroes. Mickey Mantle, Johnny Bench, Tony Gwynn, Sandy Koufax, and Bob Ross.
2-on, 2-out tie game in the bottom of the ninth. Peapod leads off second, Hoot off first. A 3-2 count on Ross, and here's the pitch. And there's a deep drive to right field. Back, and that ball is out of here. An almighty wallop by Bob Ross, and the game is over. There is joy in Bobville, thanks to a happy little home run by the world's greatest baseball player, Bob Ross.
Hold on. Bob Ross didn't play baseball. So why are we doing a baseball bit? Bob Ross Bobblehead Night. At the World Series? We're going to the World Series?
Jack Murphy Stadium in San Diego, scene of Game 1 of the 1984 World Series. Temperature in the 70s, a beautiful night for a big ball game.
Wait, that's not where Bob Ross Bobblehead Night is. Where are we really going? Daytona Beach. Okay, could be worse. We sure? All right. Daytona Beach, Florida, where if you listen closely, you can hear the sounds of sea turtles mating. And the sounds of baseball.
A long time for folks. It is time for our ceremonial first pitches. Here tonight we're kicking off the second 100 years of baseball right here in the world's most famous beach, Daytona Beach, Florida.
This is what's called single A ball. The players here may make the big league someday, might even play in the World Series. But right now, they're just kids. Young prospects playing for the Daytona Tortugas. Jim Jaworski is the team's general manager. Part of Jim's job is to make sure his young players are taken care of. His staff, too. And his stadium, named after a baseball legend.
Then Jackie Robinson singles to left, and Reese scores the first Brooklyn run of the game.
Jim also does some other stuff at Jackie Robinson Stadium.
From ticket sales to sponsorship to concessions to merchandise to you name it.
For years, Daytona was a minor league affiliate of the Chicago Cubs. 8 years ago, things changed. They rebranded themselves as the Tortugas, a cool way for the beach town team to honor its marine reptile inhabitants. Sea turtle nesting in Daytona Beach just happens to start right around the same time as baseball season. And like many minor league baseball teams, the Tortugas don't just serve peanuts and soda pop. They also serve the community.
Sea turtle conservation and making sure that we're doing beach cleanups, making sure that we're part of the community. We work very closely with the city of Daytona Beach and their Little League program, working on a really cool project here currently, rehabbing one of their Little League fields, and that's what it's about.
Minor league games are about more than just baseball. They're about all-you-can-eat hot dogs, wacky mascots, lawn bowling, and the promotions. Activities and giveaways that encourage family fun and put more fannies in the seats to watch a ball game.
O'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
In 2017, one of Jim's coworkers in the Tortugas front office pitched an idea for one of those promotions. It involves someone we know.
I grew up in Florida and was about 20 years old before I ever saw snow.
There's people who, including myself, who knew who Bob Ross was, but didn't necessarily know what that promotion would look like.
Born and raised in Volusia County, Bob Ross is a bit of a mythical figure in Daytona. Not as a home run king, but as a hometown hero. In Daytona Beach, Bob was the Babe Ruth of burnt umber, the Cal Ripken of cad yellow. Even though Bob wasn't a shortstop or a pitcher, he still had a few tricks up his sleeve.
When you look at the process of him painting, and you're like, there's no way that is going to turn into that. And then it does, and you're like, no way.
And so it was in 2017 that the Daytona Tortugas created a promotion around Bob, bestowing upon our happy painter one of the sport's highest honors, the first ever Bob Ross Bobblehead Night.
Then we started to get to work. We put together a happy little 5K. We planted a happy little tree. From a concession standpoint, we had paint palette parfaits. We had Bob Ross certified instructors giving a pregame painting class. We had, look-alike contests where we encouraged fans to dress up. And oh, by the way, the bobblehead.
And on July 15th of that same year, it all happened. This wasn't just a giveaway for some tchotchke you put on your shelf. This was a full-blown experience. And the largest July crowd in Daytona history turned out for it. 4th of July weekend aside.
So then, we look at 2018 and say, okay, what's next, right? What does 2.0 look like?
The giveaway was a big hit with fans. It gained nationwide attention. After the season ended, the Tortugas were named winners of a prestigious Golden Bobblehead Award. They won 2, in fact, for Best Theme Night and Best Overall Promotion.
So we said, okay, well, it makes sense for the 18th version to be gold.
Minor League Baseball had recognized the Tortugas for what was one of the most creative and successful promotions that year.
They're very special. Very special.
In 2018, the fans got their gold Bob bobblehead. And for the past 5 years, with slight tweaks to the bobblehead designs and the planned activities, Bob Ross Bobblehead Night in Daytona Beach has carried on. Do you see this going on for another 5 years, another 10 years? Like, how many shirts can you put Bob Ross in before? There's too many.
That's a good question. That'll be a part of the conversation here this offseason. Obviously throughout the years, we've built an absolutely great relationship with the Bob Ross folks. And, to say you went to a painting class before you went and saw 9 innings of baseball, and oh, by the way, you got a bobblehead, that's pretty cool.
I got an idea.
Okay.
During the 7th inning stretches at a lot of stadiums, you have, like in Milwaukee, they have all the hot dog and the French fries like running. And then in DC, they have all the presidents. You got to have like the guys dressed up like in the Bob Ross costumes, like maybe Bob Ross and a squirrel and a paintbrush, and they're having the race, and people have to pick who wins.
I like it.
Write it down.
I like it. Like a car race on the video board, right? But maybe it's like 3 or 4 different paintings that are racing down the beach, and see who wins. Is it the wood landscape? Is it the ocean landscape? Or, is it a nice little mountain? I don't know. We'll see.
You got paintings running around. I wanted Bob, a guy in a big Bob Ross inflatable costume to be running around, but you got actual paintings running around the stadium. Well, they can run together. Maybe Bob Ross chases them with the paintbrush.
It's Rustic Barn in the lead, followed closely by Gray Mountain. And here comes Home in the Valley on the outside. Home in the Valley is making a move, and they're neck and neck. Rustic Barn and Home in the Valley. And folks, it looks like this Bob Ross painting race is going to come down to a photo finish.
The Tortugas ended this past season with Bob Ross Bobblehead Night 5.0. They advertised it as the final Bob Ross Bobblehead Night. Say it ain't so, Jim. Say it ain't so.
When you have this much power, you have to make big decisions.
But I don't believe it. Cher came back. Robert Downey Jr. came back. So did Kiss and Tina Turner. And if anyone knows how to make a comeback, even in bobblehead form, it's Bob Ross.
We can do that if we want to.
So don't be surprised if someday you and me will be sitting at a Daytona Tortugas game, eating a palette parfait, and watching a guy dressed as Bob Ross chase a bunch of paintings around Jackie Robinson Stadium.
Top of the 9, 2 men out. Bob Ross stands on the mound, 1 strike away from history. The happy little pitcher looks in for the side, bobs his head into the windup. And hold on, there appears to be a sea turtle on the field. Wait, make that 2 sea turtles. The umpire calls time, and folks, I don't believe what I'm seeing. The sea turtles seem to be
October isn't just about baseball. It's about football and pumpkin spice lattes, breaking out the flannel, autumn leaves, and Halloween. In 2019, I dressed up like Bob Ross for a Halloween house party. It was an easy sell. I already had the beard. The outfit was a snap. A baby blue chambray shirt, unbuttoned to about 2/3 of the way down to effectively show off chest hair and rugged masculinity. A pair of blue jeans, a couple of paintbrushes in my shirt pocket, and a small wooden palette I painted in spooky Halloween colors to top it all off. My girlfriend was a happy little tree. This was all her idea. I was a stranger to most everyone at the party, so I just introduced myself as Bob. It was a great icebreaker, and for one night, I really enjoyed being Bob Ross. That all seems like a million years ago. So much has happened since then, but I can still remember that night clearly. What a nice time I had. What a breeze it was being Bob Ross. But wait, I left something out of this story. A key element.
I mean, everybody knew him by having that hair, that beautiful brown globe.
Bob Ross first showed up on our TV screens in 1983.
Hi, I'm Bob Ross, and for the next 13 weeks, I'll be your host as we experience the joy of painting. I think each of us, sometime during our life, has wanted to paint a picture. I think there's an artist hid in the bottom of every single one of us.
He wore tinted glasses. His beard in season 1 was extra. By season 2, the glasses were gone, the chin hair sculpted back. But one thing remained consistent: the brown fuzz surrounding Bob's skull. There are stories about how Bob chose to style his hair this way to save money on haircuts. But this was the 80s, baby! And no matter your style or the size of your bank account, volume was in. Luscious locks on men and women, often in the form of long curly hair. A now precious commodity.
We just washed the hair. You know, I work on my hair a long time, and you hit it. He hits my hair.
With styles inspired by the culture of the times. Heavy metal. Country music.
Working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living.
And fashion.
Brooke Shields, she's a beautiful doll.
It's the Brooke Shields doll with long, beautiful hair you can style in so many ways to make believe she's...
In the 80s, huge hair was everywhere. So maybe Bob was just rolling with the times, rocking his Guess jeans, playing with his Rubik's Cube, and sporting his 80s perm.
We want this to have a lot of depth in it.
Other folks might tell you that Bob's look was deliberate, meant to be timeless. The button-down blue shirt, the jeans. It's like Bob knew we'd still be watching 4 decades later. So what was Bob's motivation for this mountainous mop? Were haircuts really that expensive? Maybe if we got to know more about the hair itself, we'd get to the bottom of Bob's top.
I'm Dina. I live in Secaucus, New Jersey. I own a hair salon. I've been doing hair for like 9 years now, makeup for 15.
We talked to our friend, professional hairdresser Dina with the pink hair, to get some clarity on Bob's almighty bush. Dina's an authority on the subject of hair.
I started doing makeup because I was really bad at it and puberty was not kind to me, so I decided to grab the bull by the horns. So I went to makeup school, I taught classes like all around the country, and then after that I opened my shop in Hoboken, and then I decided to go to hair school so that I could do a full makeover, hair and makeup, and here we are.
We wanted an expert who didn't just know hair, but who knows Bob too.
I mean, I used to watch Bob Ross, who didn't, right? I mean, I was a late 80s baby.
Next, and without provocation, Dina starts showing off, spitting knowledge about the spine-tingling and soothing special powers of Bob's voice.
Bob Ross is the original ASMR. Let's be serious. I mean, who doesn't want happy trees?
So okay, Dina knows Bob Ross. I'm convinced. Now about that hairstyle.
A perm is basically a treatment done to the hair. It's a chemical process, and it reforms what's called your disulfide bonds. So that is something that's going to cause a permanent change to the hair. in terms of its texture. It breaks down your hair and reforms it, so it goes from straight to curly, and people also do the opposite, which is like a keratin treatment, which goes from curly to straighter.
Has a man ever sat in your chair and said, "Give me a perm"?
No, thankfully. I don't like to do perms. I can't stand them.
Apparently, for hairdressers, perms are a pain in the ass. The hair has to be wrapped in rods, and the whole thing takes hours. But for all the trouble that a perm's worth, the upside is that you can maintain one for months.
Something like a perm, because it permanently changes the bond of the hair, you can't mess it up that much. Anyone who applies too much heat to their hair, you're gonna mess it up. It's gonna get frizzy and damaged, but as long as someone is using good shampoo and conditioner and they're not frying their hair with heat, it'll last up to 6 months. A perm really grows out. The wave will get just bigger over time.
Gotcha. All right, I'm learning a lot about something I'll never get.
So educational for no reason for you. It's like me learning about beard care for myself. Hopefully I never need to learn
You probably
about
have a
beard
better
care for
chance of
myself.
growing a beard than I have of getting a perm.
Listen, I don't want to hear that. No offense.
I promised myself I wouldn't make any bald jokes during my interview with the hairdresser, and I almost made it until the end. To distract from more bald jokes, I pull out some photos and show them to Dina. Bob in Season 2, 1984, side by side with Bob in Season 12, 1987. And what we discovered about Bob's perm was shocking.
We've grown. We've grown. Both spiritually and follicularly.
Right, you feel like it's bigger now, right?
It absolutely is.
It appeared that, as the 80s wore on, it wasn't just Bob's profile that was getting bigger. Is it possible Bob had kept his hair away from the heat and the barber for not just months, but years? After all, that's what perm is short for. Permanent. Before I can raise the question, Dina looks at the photos once more and makes another startling observation.
I also love, if you look at the painting, the edges of the painting match his hair. He really incorporated his life into the border of his painting.
And hey, that's the point, isn't it? I think Bob Ross kept the perm because people knew him for it. Whether he liked it or not was irrelevant. That hair wasn't for Bob. It was for us. It became a trademark, a known quantity every time you turned on your set. On every episode of The Joy of Painting, you were going to get calm, creativity, a little humor, some kindness, maybe a wild animal, and a whole lot of Bob Ross hair. It's on the logos, on the paint, on the brushes. It's unmistakable, iconic. Simply put, there's no mystery to Bob's hair. Bob's hair is Bob.
I don't think Bob Ross's brand would have been what it was without this beautiful coif. However, if he was trying to be a sexy painter, he could have gone back to the gentleman's cut, because Bob Ross without it, he kind of looked like a daddy. He looks hot. There's a picture of him I'm looking at, button down, open a little bit. He's got the glasses on. They kind of look like aviators, but I know they're not. And he's got just a nice, what would be modern today haircut. He looks good.
And there you have it. Whether or not Bob was trying to be a sexy painter is a matter of opinion. My thought is that sexy painters don't try to be sexy. They just are. And if you're thinking of dressing as Bob for Halloween this year, yeah, you can get a wig. But at least now you know what it's like to have the real thing. Or maybe you can get a gentleman's cut and a pair of aviators. And when someone at the Halloween party asks you who you are, you just tell them, I'm Hot Daddy Bob Ross.
Sometimes you can get a little crazy.
Yeah, I'll never really know what it's like to have hair like Bob's. But with the big wig and the salt and pepper beard, I kind of did look like him. But that was nothing compared to one man's experience becoming Bob Ross. It was next level. Prosthetics, rubber foam, plaster, makeup, magic. You know, like you see in the movies. Or in this fella's case, a TV commercial.
Just like that. Nestle the Mountain Dew into the fresh snow. Let's add a little more. Make that bottle nice and cold.
Life takes you down many roads.
Now, if we're going to walk through the woods, we need a little path.
Brian Mazzarello never planned on being an actor. Growing up in California's Bay Area, he had dabbled. A few skits in a church youth group, a little improv. He was more interested in art than acting. And then,
when I got to college, I was an art major, but I ended up hanging out with all the film guys on campus. And I worked my way into a couple of their films because I started out as a behind-the-scenes photographer. Then I designed the movie poster for the little film they were making.
Brian spent hours in the cafeteria at Biola University, consuming caffeine-laced beverages while perfecting his own stories and punchlines. His newfound passion for performing led to a hosting gig on a satellite TV show for teens.
And that was really fun. And we were pretty much like run and gun, filming in the streets. Definitely didn't use permits. It was a very low budget show. It was not a union show. But we had a lot of fun, and we could make up a lot of the content ourselves and shoot it.
But bohemian pursuits are risky. The practical side of us, the safe side, often intercedes. Making a happy buck through art, music, writing, podcasting takes more than just dedication. And so after college, Brian leaned into a career as a graphic designer. He'd eventually start up a design studio in Oakland, working alongside his wife, Stephanie. One night, he shared a meal with another graphic designer who'd been on a couple of TV shows.
I was like, how'd you do that? He's like, oh, I have a manager, I have an agent, and I've been auditioning. I'm like, you can do that here in San Francisco Bay Area? He's like, oh, for sure. He's like, why, are you interested? I'm like, absolutely. So he told me to sign up on this website called Casting Networks. I signed up. Within a week, I had an audition. I booked my first 2 auditions. And I was like, oh, yeah, baby, we're back.
But just let all those little things happen.
It's never been that easy to book 2 in a row like that. And again, but it's like that inertia that you have in the beginning of pursuing your passion again. And then, yeah, I booked 40 projects up in San Francisco. And then that's when my wife and I were like, all right, let's try this in LA.
Now, you could argue that the only reason Brian Mozzarella was acting at this point is because of that meal he had in Oakland with his friend.
But it was just sort of in the back of my mind. I didn't know what to do with it. And then when I found that this other designer friend of mine, ironically, his name's Ross.
So the road that led Brian to becoming Bob Ross started with encouragement from a man named Ross.
Isn't that something?
And of course, Bob affected Brian in a similar way.
His encouragement was always so fascinating that he was really open to people exploring their creativity and no judgment. I thought that was always kind of cool to see that on television.
It's September 2020. Brian and his family are hunkered down in a little West Coast city called Angels Camp, a brief escape from the unexpected madness of a pandemic and the wildfires spreading near their home in Southern California.
And when I was up there, I got an email from my agent that says, hey, you have an audition for Mountain Dew. The audition was improv as Bob for like 1 to 2 minutes.
Brian was supposed to go kayaking with his family that morning. He and his wife hang back to make Brian's Bob Ross audition tape.
Luckily, we had brought up watercolors up on the trip. So I break out my watercolor kit, and then I just start mock painting on this painting that's in the hotel room.
And just like Bob with his paintings, Brian makes some creative, snap decisions.
I knew everybody was going to say happy trees, happy little trees. So I was like, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say anything about clouds.
Oh, that's brave. That's
because I knew everyone's going to say that. I just figured that's going to happen. So instead, I just was like, Van Dyke Brown, like phthalo blue.
You leaned into the colors.
Yeah.
Brian gets a call back. Now he's back home in his kitchen, getting ready to audition over Zoom. The folks from Mountain Dew would be watching. So would folks from a big New York ad agency. And the director of the commercial, too.
No pressure at all.
So I set up a laptop on this huge stack of cookbooks so that that laptop was even with me. I set up my little light, and then I got my little painting set ready. And they're running behind because I'm sure trying to figure all this out takes a lot of time. So I'm standing there with the lights on and the Zoom just any second, it's like, you're waiting to be invited in. And it's just waiting there.
How foreign must that have felt?
I sweat through 2 of my blue shirts, and I had to and before they got back on, I swapped into my last light blue button-up shirt, just trying to look like a Bob as much as possible. It went as well as it could, but you never know. You never know with an audition.
Like most auditions, Brian hopes for the best and quickly moves on with his life. On to the next thing. And then Brian gets a text from the casting agency. Is he available for a makeup test?
I drive up to this big warehouse. Doesn't look like anything. It's next to a shipping and receiving building. Walk inside, and I'm greeted by Grogu from The Mandalorian. He's sitting in the lobby, And then there's a giant Iron Man suit. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be, because I was a little nervous that maybe it would come off cheesy because I didn't know the size or scale of this project. Just audition, right? And I'm like, man, I hope if I get this, like the makeup's good. Maybe they'll put a cool wig on and like glue a beard on. I had no idea what I was in for.
Well, I think, yeah, you probably changed your perspective when you saw Grogu.
From The Mandalorian. And they're like, right this way, Mr. Mozzarella. And they like escorted me into this room. They're like, we're going to begin life casting now. And they're like, you've done this before, right? I have no idea what that is. And they're like, well, just sit back and relax.
Now comes the fun.
They actually make a cast of my whole, from like my shoulders up to my head, and they cover me in this goop that hardens into like almost like a cast. That's a 45-minute process. So I like channeled my mindfulness breathing, because you can only breathe through your nose. So they're making a mold of me, which they'll later sculpt the attributes that they want to make me look more like Bob.
At this point, it's clear this is going to be more than a Bob Ross Halloween costume.
They had an awesome sculptor sculpt eye bags, crow's feet, a brow piece, a chin piece, earlobes. So then the next time I came in, we'd like tried it all on to see how it looks. And there was a sculptor who sculpted Bob's teeth to like make my mouth look more like his. And then they sent me to an eye contact specialist to get eye contacts made to match his eyes, because my eyes are blue and Bob's are brown.
Fine-tuning every Bob Rossian detail to a T.
And then they bring out the beard that they had hair by hair, hand threaded. And it was unbelievable. It looked amazing. As soon as I put it on, like I was a different person. I was an absolutely different person. Then they brought out the wig. That wig and beard continued to be shaped and trimmed, even up to the last minute on set.
From the neck up, Brian is now a Bob Ross double. But the makeup team isn't done. They make a piece for Brian to wear on his shoulder to change his posture.
And then never gotten this note before. They said, you're a little thin, so we're going to build a slight just belly for you. And they built this suit for me to wear.
I noticed the gut in the commercial was distinctive.
Yeah. It was so calibrated, and that was actually made of sand. So I'm like really carrying the weight in that. You could feel it. So you move realistically. It's not like padding it.
So next time you dress up like Bob Ross, don't forget your sand gut. This all sounds like a lot of work and a lot of fun. But remember, this is fall 2020. And while the rest of the world is growing accustomed to isolation, this whirlwind experience has Brian feeling a bit overwhelmed.
Because like this is deep pandemic period where like everyone's still masked. It's like very serious. I've been pretty much shut away in my house, and now I'm like around all these people and everybody's like poking and prodding me, and it was like, whoa, this is moving fast.
And on the day of filming, after 4 hours of makeup, then camera tests, adjustments, spray painting, wig altering, it's no longer Brian Mozzarella on the set. It's Bob Ross.
Hi, glad to see you today.
It's alive! Oh, it's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
And then it was like time to roll.
It's a grueling but triumphant transformation. And to keep himself calm during the process, Brian does what a lot of us do. He turns to Bob.
And I was like just absorbing it and taking it in and just letting his positivity kind of like come into me, because you can get caught all up in all the craziness and
stressful.
You could panic. Yeah, you could panic and stress out, especially when you're like covering all these prosthetics. But yeah, I just let his calmness kind of like wash over me and just help me stay in character.
In the commercial, Brian, as Bob, paints a winter mountain scene. In its center, nestled in the snow, is a bottle of Mountain Dew. A voiceover actor was used for Bob's voice, so Brian has to lip sync the lines, get it down perfect. Meanwhile, certified Ross instructor Nick Hankins, via computer technology, provides the arm that Bob uses to paint in the ad's close-ups. So you could say that it took not one, not two, but 3 men to portray Bob Ross. The one-day shoot takes 16 hours.
So the last shot that we did took about 2 hours to get right. And it's the moment where Bob reaches into the painting and pulls out the Mountain Dew. So this is a special effects shot. So it had to be done really perfect. And they had to get the Mountain Dew bottle to be just right. So it was really, really technical and really, really hard. And I was absolutely wiped out.
It was shot on October 29th, Bob's birthday.
It's really hard to tell like how you're doing, if you're doing great or not, because it's about getting the finished piece perfect, right? So I'm a little bit down thinking maybe I could have done it better. You know, I'm always like hard on myself, like, oh, what could I have improved? What could I have done better on? Then the producer waves me over. He's like, hey, the folks in New York want to talk with you. And he like turns his laptop around. There's like a screen of all these faces from the producers and all the staff and stuff. And I was like, oh, hey guys. And I'm thinking they're going to like say like, hey, we're going to have to do a reshoot or something, like maybe I didn't do it right. And instead they all start applauding.
You can do anything in your world that you want to do.
And I'm like, I barely held it together. I was so emotional at that moment because it was such a long day and it was such like a process to be transformed, and just to like get that feedback instantaneously afterwards at the end. I was so overwhelmed and I felt so grateful that, and I'd never had that on the set before where like people thanked me, and that just felt so good.
See? I told you it feels good to be Bob Ross.
I get emotional when I tell that story because it's just so nice to receive like concrete, clear feedback that you did a good job. And then I go back to my makeup chair and it takes about an hour to have everything cleaned up and everybody's packing everything away. And then you get back to your car and you're like, wow, that was an adventure. Like, this is going to be something really cool.
The Mountain Dew ad airs on TV the following spring. During March Madness, as a nation of college basketball fans watch Bob paint some happy little droplets onto a soda bottle.
Remember, it's your world, your delicious dew. There are no wrong choices.
It's been watched over 1 million times online. The Pepsi-Cola company also produced a fictional Lost Joy of Painting episode featuring Brian. A 40-minute video on how to paint a snowy mountain scene with a bottle of Mountain Dew in it. You can find that online too. I asked Brian if he kept a memento to commemorate his almighty transformation.
They ultimately ended up not using the teeth for Bob. I technically could claim those if I wanted, but I don't know what to do with it.
If they're still up for grabs, why wouldn't you want, Bob's teeth, man? I mean, come on.
I could do it. They said I'm welcome to come anytime and pick them up.
They're still waiting for you in an office somewhere?
Yeah, they're just sitting on a shelf.
I see, yeah, like a set of teeth with a little tag that says Brian Mozzarella on it.
Yeah, it's like, when's he coming? Pick up his teeth.
Oh, by the way, the name of the ad? Refreshing Opportunity.
Yeah, and I think it's a commercial we all needed to have. Something fun like that was just such a fun surprise in the middle of the pandemic when like times were kind of dark, and like to see Bob up there and screen and come back, that's just so exciting.
Brian Mozzarella is still acting, writing scripts, designing, creating. He's about to start making a short film about his family roots in Italy, something he's pretty passionate about. And Brian still does it up on Halloween, mostly with his wife, Stephanie.
Well, you're a married man. What about like couples costumes?
Oh, we definitely do couples costumes. We won.
Yeah, give me some examples.
We went, it was Mary Poppins. We went Mary Poppins and what's her British bloke's name? The chimney sweeper.
Dick Van Dyke.
Yeah, Dick Van Dyke, the chimney sweep.
Bert, it's you.
In the flesh and at your service.
But for all the cheery chimney sweeps and kooky professors Brian's dressed up as each October, nothing was as special as that one October he got to be Bob Ross. Well, the old clock on the wall tells me this podcast episode is just about complete. Let me sign it, hold on. I want to thank my guests Jim Jaworski, Dina with the pink hair, and Brian Mozzarella. And a big thanks to you, Bob Ross. Bob, how do you think this perm looks?
And it looks like somebody took a big axe and whacked the bottom of it off.
Well, that's probably not good. I knew I shouldn't have tried to do this myself. Remember to support your local public television station. Say thanks for giving us Bob Ross and the joy of painting. We want to see your paintings. Use hashtag #PaintLikeBobRoss. Bob Ross certified instructors are the only ones that know how to teach you Bob's world-famous painting method. Don't settle for second best. Find a local CRI at bobross.com and then click Take a Class. Got your own Bob Ross story to tell? Leave us a message at 866-FANBRUSH. Or you can email us at podcast@bobross.com. And follow online on Facebook at The Joy of Painting with Bob Ross. The Joy of Bob Ross is produced by Lonely Weekend Productions in partnership with Bob Ross, Inc. Bob Ross name and images are registered trademarks of Bob Ross, Inc.